talking about oak trees today. So, I'm Nathan. I am from Poway originally. And moved to North Carolina eventually, and then came back. When I was a kid, I lived in Michigan, and that's really where my tree journey began. I don't know, how many of you have ever climbed a tree before? We've all climbed trees, right? So do you remember the very first tree you ever climbed? Raise your hand. Someone tell me the story. What was the first tree you ever climbed?
I don't remember what it was. It was in Ohio, though.
In Ohio?
Mm-hmm.
Was it big?
Yes.
Yeah. How old were you?
Pretty young, probably 7, 8, 9, somewhere in there.
Nice.
Yeah.
What about you, Riz? Anyone, yeah.
Probably a Melaleuca tree in Ocean Beach.
Melaleuca in Ocean Beach?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, right on the grass right there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to share?
Well, I grew up here in Valley Center, so I'm sure it was an oak tree that I
Right on. Yeah.
I'm Nick DePlum. It was a food tree I planted in Ramona about maybe 4 years ago, 3 years ago. I think that was my first tree that I had. So
Nice. Cool. Yeah?
I remember climbing a tree. I'm from Massachusetts originally, so if anyone's familiar with Duxbury Beach or Duxbury, there's one spot overlooking just the ocean and just so beautiful. I don't remember what type of tree it was, but it was one that grew sideways and then up straight. So just climbing it like a monkey. That's all
awesome.
I remember.
Yeah, we were in Michigan, and I was 4 or 5, and there was a tree in our front yard that I'm pretty sure was an oak. Just thinking about like what I know of oak trees now, like looking at the bark and the leaves and everything in my mind. But we couldn't reach the top. There was me and my older brother, who was 2 years older than me, so he was like 6, and we pulled the chair to the front of the tree, and that's how we got up to it. And I was the first one up, and he went under me. And I thought it was so cool, and I was like exploring this cool tree, and I was up in it, and then I wanted to get down. He's like, "No, you're staying up there." And I kind of got mad, but yeah, that was fun, climbing trees. And so past that point in Michigan, I remember being in the woods when we were camping. And the woods out there are dense, like they're super, super dense woods, really tall. And I was looking into the woods at sunset, and the sun was behind me, so that means I was looking east. And it was dark. Like behind me was light, and you could see where the light ends. And I was like, oh my God, you could get lost in there. And that was kind of like my first like, whoa, trees. and then later into life, I started working with Davila Resource Group, where I work at now. And I started in Santa Cruz as a utility forester. And if you don't know what a utility forester is, which we live in Valley Center, you do know. We inspect all the power lines to make sure the trees don't fall into or grow into those power lines. So I quickly learned how to do tree risk assessment. So I'm constantly looking at trees thinking like, in the next 18 months, what's the risk that this tree could break and fall over? And so I got good at looking at those trees in that kind of a lens. And then in 2021, I was offered the chance to work with SDG&E down here to put together, launch, and manage a program to put 10,000 trees a year out into SDG&E's service territory. And I said, yeah, because that sounded cool. I honestly almost didn't do it because I was super into utility forestry, and I wanted to be a lead and just keep going on that path. And my director, Vince, who's supplied a lot of really cool opportunities my way, I was like, should I do it? He's like, do it. He's like, you can always go back to that. Like, do this. This is one, you'll never get this chance again. And so I did. And it turned into what we call a sustainable tree program, which I'll let Annabelle say it if you want to give a few words.
Sure.
This is Annabelle. She works with me on the tree program.
Hi. So yeah, my name is Annabelle. I joined Davila Resource Group about 2.5 years ago. I started doing the same thing, utility forestry, where I was looking at all the trees and the power lines. And then I shifted and worked into the office doing reporting and that sort of thing, got a GIS certification, just became really good with data entry. And then, yeah, this position opened up about 6 months ago to be an outreach specialist for the program. So basically, SDG&E's program is to give away 10,000 trees a year. Since 2021, we've overexceeded, Nathan and another girl, Madeline, was part of the project back then, and they overexceeded 10,000 for the past 2 years. So just about 11,000 plus for the last 2 years. So we just reached over 30,000 trees since 2021 in July. So we're well over 30,000 now. But yeah, it's really awesome. You can get up to 10 free trees for your property. They'll deliver them directly to you for free. And you just have to plant them and grow them. So you guys would be, if you're interested in planting and growing trees, it's such an awesome opportunity just to get a pretty well-established tree just to plant on your property. So many tree benefits, and reforesting the environment is just so important. So I'm very thankful to be part of this opportunity. It's been such an awesome experience for me, and I love my job. It's really awesome.
It's called San Diego Tree, not Tree San Diego.
So,
Yeah, Tree San Diego is different. They're a nonprofit that does a lot of really good work too.
They sure do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. So SDG&E, part of their whole sustainability goals, there's a lot of stuff they do. And planting trees is really just one of a whole list of things they do. But it's a really cool one that we're a part of. And so in perpetuity, 10,000 trees a year is the goal. Whether that's, hey, you have a palm tree under your power lines, that's literally like you can't cut a palm in height, like if you do it, so it kills it. And so for those people, or anyone with a eucalyptus tree, where every single year we have a guy in a bucket right next to the lines in the trees, like, why don't we remove that and give you guys a low-growing tree right there that you don't have to worry about us, and we can focus on other things. That's actually a really small percentage of what we do. The bread and butter of what we do is direct to private properties like you guys here. And I think that's, I don't know, share your experience, like when we give you trees, right, like, and then you plant them, as opposed to if I came on your property and planted it, like, how is that different?
Well, it's really exciting because we a lot of times get to kind of select which tree goes where.
Yeah.
And so you can have some strategies for your property, like I'd like a big giant pop of pink in this one area, and you get all of these crepe myrtles that are called Tuscarora, and they're all pink at the same time, which is just so cool.
Yeah.
And what's actually most important to us now specifically is we like the trees that are good for fire, and we like the trees that are, pretty water-wise, so that, because we live in a high fire area, so we like to plant those. So we've had a lot of fun looking at the oaks and the cypresses, and yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, and so that's just it.
We've been very grateful. Thank you.
You're awesome. Yeah, thank you. Just giving trees to people that want to plant them. We've found over these years of doing this program that by doing it that way, when we go back, we've audited every year, at least. We're working on the next year right now, but we did a full 12% audit of 2021, and it was 85% success. Like, the trees were a year and a half later still alive and thriving and whatnot. There's a few properties, there's one specific I remember in Escondido. They had 4 watering zones, and one of the watering zones stopped, and they didn't catch it for a month and a half, but that drove our number down. I was like, no, it's just one property, one situation, but
Yeah.
cool.
But yeah, we have a booth outside, so if you guys are interested, come talk to me and I can get you some trees. Thank you.
Trees. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
So oak trees, right? Since, I don't know, Moosa Creek, how do I even have a relationship with you guys? It's through that program, right? And I've slowly, over this last really year, as the program's been built, walking into the SDG tree program, I didn't know anything about native trees, honestly, and why the importance was there. I love trees, all trees, but I wasn't at all aware of that world. And so as the program got built and we're now established, I work with the native nurseries, I work with all nurseries, and I started learning more and getting more involved with Urban Forestry Council, and just learning God, native trees are really important. And so when I talked with Marilyn, and she's like, yeah, we want to celebrate the month of October we call it Oaktober. And I'm like, cool, I'm down. Let's do something with that. And then they asked if I wanted to talk about oak trees. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds awesome. And little did I know, I'm sure you call it Oaktober because that's when you can pick acorns, right? I didn't know that. and so what I also learned this month is that the oak trees are massing right now, in my opinion. If you drive all over the county, all the oak, I almost drove off the road the other day. So look at all those oaks. The acorns are going crazy. Raise your hand if you know what masting is. Right, so if you don't know, masting is when the oak trees produce a ton of acorns all at once, and it's more than they do in previous years. Why did they do that? Well, there's a few ideas of it, right? Because let's think about it this way. So hypothesis 1, how many critters and animals out there eat acorns? They call them acorn predators, right? There's a lot of acorn predators out there, and if the oak trees produce the same kind of quantity year after year of acorns, you know, all the predator populations would build up to a point where they would eat it all, and the oak tree wouldn't really have a chance to reproduce. So one idea is that they just flood the system like every 3 or 4 years infrequently, so that the predator populations will, you know, get overwhelmed and not be able to eat them all, and then reproduce a lot, but then the next year not have enough food and then die back off. And it's this kind of method for them to do that. Another reason they might do it is, you know, they're wind pollinators, and so the catkins, I believe they're called, but okay, there you go. They need wind to go, and so if there's, you know, if there's not frost that kills them and it's not a heavy rain year, they'll successfully, you know, blow their seeds and be able to reproduce. And then another idea is that resource allocation, right? If they're focusing on reproducing acorns, they're not going to grow up as much, and so they have to kind of pick and choose. And it sounds like it's kind of like all of it together is why they do it. But yeah, I didn't know that at all, and just learning about massing is really cool, because now, like literally right now, anywhere you go in the county, pretty much, they're going for it. And something I've been wanting to talk to you guys about to see if you know, or Doug, Tommy, or whoever, is I thought that, you know, there's a few different classes of oak trees. There's like gold, red, and white oaks. Are there any more? For now, I think that's what I'm at, is the 3 main ones, at least in San Diego County. And I thought that they don't all do it at once. Like whenever a massing happens, it's usually one group of them. But I'm seeing agrifolias, which I believe is a red oak, right? You're nodding your head. Do you know if agrifolia is a red oak?
Yes, it is.
It is, thank you. Cool. Sorry to put you on the spot. Cool. So agrifolia is a red oak, but I see that one going right now. And then Engelmann, scrub oak, those are in the white oak category, I believe. And those are, so the white oak group is really going off right now. Like if any group is massing, it's them. I haven't seen widespread across agrifolias, but I have seen some, like right outside here. There's a few of them that are really going off. So maybe for those, it's more environmentally, Valley Center, the oaks just love it up here because all of them are going off. It's really, really cool to see that. So as far as animals that eat acorns, there's a lot. Like, and then in general too, just thinking about, I'm gonna come back to acorns in a minute because there's one more cool point I wanna make. An oak tree is what they call a keystone species, right? And a keystone species is one where if you take that species out, there's like hundreds of life, you know, species that depend on that specific tree. Like, I mean, I can just go through this list. So you have birds, there's quail, there's woodpeckers, there's jays, there's hummingbirds, hawks, mammals. You have rats, bears, mountain lions, mule deer, foxes, rabbits, butterflies, and then all the other vegetation that kind of grows around them. They all depend on oak trees. Like that's what it means. It's like if you take an oak tree out, all of those animals are like, oh God, where do we go now? And so another cool point with natives that, you know, we were talking with Kevin at lunch today, and it's like you have with the native trees that grow in this region, they evolutionarily have, like, everything kind of grew up together here, and there could be, you know, like hundreds of species that depend on a tree species. And if you put a tree that's not a native into the environment, you know, maybe only a couple. You know, that's not that, and some of the invasive ones aren't good, and I think it kind of obviously flows onto which are good and which aren't. But natives are amazing if you really want to focus on, like, how can I help the environment? Plant native tree, plant native perennials or whatever around that tree. And so back to the acorn thing real quick. If so many species eat acorns, right? And on a typical year where it's not a massing year, you look on the ground and most of them are eaten or they have bugs that got inside of them. How do they reproduce? Well, 65 million years ago about, the oak tree and the jaybird kind of popped up together. And so let's think about it this way. An oak tree can produce up to like 10 million acorns in its lifetime if it grows in full and it's doing well. And so per year, a blue jay, or not just, blue jay is one type of jay, I always say that, but a jaybird will take and plant over 4,000 acorns, and they can go up to a mile away from that oak tree. And then they're kind of territorial with it. If they think another jay saw them plant it, they'll wait a few minutes and then they'll go dig it up and plant it somewhere else. So they're kind of funny like that. But the cool thing about that is out of all those, let's just say it's 4,000, they only remember about where 1,000 of them are. And so they're obsessed with just hiding them and putting them all over the place. And then they're like, wait, I know there's some here, and then they skip a bunch. And so they effectively plant over 3,000 acorns a year. So jays are awesome, and I thought that was cool. Did anybody know that before today? Cool. If you read Ptolemy's book or listened to his stuff, but yeah. So that was cool. And then if we talk about how many species are there worldwide, that was another kind of like, well, how many oak trees are there? And you have to do pretty decent study, right, to figure that question out, and it changes over time. And at one time, there was a study made in California that I'll reference in a minute. That was, 10, 15 years ago, but it's still pretty cool to see numbers like that. I wanted to read from California Native Plant Society something that Fred Roberts wrote in 2022, talking about just how the oak trees are really cool because they interhybridate, and I think a lot of times with plants, if you hybridize, they can't reproduce, but oaks aren't that way. And so check this out. It says, it's important to remember when identifying virtually any oak, the leaves may not be at all characteristic of the species if the shrub or tree is resprouting after a fire or the branches have otherwise been cut. The leaves can then be very weird or unusual. Immature oak leaves can be hairy, even in species that generally are without hairs when the leaves mature. For white oaks especially, minute star-shaped hairs, known as trichromes, can make or break an ID if you're trying to identify a tree, right? The leaves of the tree. For me, like when I'm trying to identify a tree, I look at the leaf first, and then if I can't figure it out from that, I go bark and shape and all that. But usually leaves, and when I teach a course to like young arborists or whatever, and that's what I always tell them, is like, look at the leaf, and then like read about it, and it always matches up. Apparently with oaks, that's not the case. Or lead even experts to complete bewilderment. Hybrids are common in oaks, but they do not cross section lines. So red oaks cross with red oaks, white oaks cross with white oaks, golden oaks cross with golden oaks. There's no red oak, white oak crosses. Within those restrictions, oaks can be promiscuous. They do not fit the old Darwinian concept that when species cross, their offspring will be sterile. In oaks, the hybrids are often quite fertile and back-crossing like crazy. I guess you could still make it work if you only wanted to recognize 3 wildly variable species of oak in North America, but that would be a poor reflection of the diversity and genetic richness of these species. So just yesterday, I went to Borrego Springs in the morning, and I'm pretty lucky with my job. I have flexibility to like make my own schedule, and so I knew I had to deliver trees out there, so I got up at like 4:30 to do it early so that I could have time to like go explore for like 30 minutes and call it a lunch break and then go back to work. So I did that, and I went and explored all over in this area, and there was like, just looking at the scrub oaks, right? It's insane. Like they're low growing, they grew maybe this tall, and then they just branch out. But when you look at like this one, next to this one, next to this one, and then this one over here, I noticed that like their leaves are different. And like knowing this information right here, it's like, I don't know. It's really interesting to think about like, what species is this? If you really want to get down to genetics, like it's like us, right? Like, we're all, it's interesting to think about for sure. And so if we had to narrow it down, there's about 500 species throughout America. Some say 300, some say 600. I just put 500 here. So it's 300 to 600 across America. And obviously from what I just explained, it's kind of hard to really pinpoint that. In North America, 500 in the world, 91 in North America. How many in California? About 20. But because of like the distinct varieties and shapes and everything, you could call it 30. 20 to 30, but like, yeah, it's hard to do it, right? And so in San Diego County, we had 10 species, 2 varieties, and 3 named hybrids, in addition to several unnamed hybrids. And I just, if you're really interested in oaks, right, you can look into all of it, but there's like red oak, so coast live oak is probably the most prominent one out here. That's a red oak. You have southern coast live oak, black oak, scrub oaks, some scrub oaks are red oaks, and then some are also white oaks. And then there's a few others. Golden oaks, there's Cedrus Island oak, canyon live oak, Palmer's oak, and then white oaks, you have Quercus berbertifolia, Moosa, and Engelmannii. So that would be the California scrub oak, Natalis scrub oak, Engelmann's oak. Do you guys, Sharon, where'd you go? Or do you guys grow Mueller's oak?
We have a few pretty old ones. But
Yeah.
they're pretty old.
I remember seeing that. Noosa Creek grows some really cool oaks. Like they have so many varieties of them here, and I think that's rad. And I think we should do more. And that's something like with our tree program. It's like there's this big push in the tree community right now to go full native. It's like there's a lot of people, and a lot of people in this room probably who like only native trees. Don't plant anything else, just do native, because it's super, super important to do that. And often a complaint is, well, it's not pretty, right? Like we like flowers on trees and stuff. And it's like, well, what if you did, the native tree and then the flowers around it and kind of created a different kind of scene like that. And I think with the oaks, there's such a variety of them that if there's not the demand to grow them, like why would a nursery spend time growing them if not enough people are getting them? So I think it's important for all of us when you're thinking about like what kind of tree do I want to plant on my property, or talking to people, be like scrub oaks. Like, scrub oaks are awesome. I never hear people really talk about that or request them, but when we tell them about them, it's like, oh, I don't want an oak, it's really big. And I was like, you haven't talked about scrub oaks, and so that's pretty cool. So referencing how you count how many trees in a population there are, for example. Something I came across was from California Oaks Foundation. They did a study called Oaks 2040. And really what their goal at the end of it was to see what's the population of oaks and what's the threat to those populations from development. And so to map all that out, I won't dive into the weeds of it because I enjoy it, but just on a bird's eye view, basically CAL FIRE and U.S. Forest Service with a remote sensing lab in Sacramento. Remote sensing is where from a satellite you shoot, or you can fly it from a satellite or on a plane, and then you just kind of laser scan the ground. And so then you put that into a computer on a GIS map, and you can say, this is this type of species, and it'll differentiate stuff by color, and it's really cool. I'm not going to go into all that right now, how it works, but it works. You can scan big amounts of landscape and then really tailor it down to different classifications to get to a point where you trust that, like, okay, it's telling me there's 1,000 oaks in this plot, I trust it, and then you can go from there.
Is there a place where you can see those maps?
Yes. If you go californiaoaks.org, I found it there, and then Oaks 2040 is the name of the study, and it's a really cool, like, you would want to print it and like have it as a flip book. It's like 40 pages long. It's well graphicked and everything, and there are maps on there.
What was the website again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, you can see it after too. It's californiaoaks.org.
Thanks.
I believe it's California Oak Foundation is who they are. So anyways, they split up that study into, not the California Oak Foundation, but the groups I just said, into 9 different categories. And so oaks in California grow either in like woodland areas or in forest areas with softwood like conifers and whatnot. And yeah, so the main types in California are black oak, blue oak, canyon live oak, coast live oak, Engelmann oak, interior live oak, Oregon white oak, tan oak, valley oak, and then a variety of hybridized mixed oaks that they couldn't put a name on for obvious reasons now. They split that into 6 regions of California. I'll talk about our region in a minute, but just to say it, there's the North Coast, right? If you're looking at the state of California, you have North Coast, then North Interior, and then Central Coast, and then the Sacramento region, San Joaquin, which is like Kern and Bakersfield, kind of like Southern Sierra, and then us, which is Southern. And that includes like Los Angeles, San Bernardino, Riverside, Orange County, and here. So I'll tell you about Southern in a minute, but California has about 8.5 million acres, right? How many of you own an acre? Or live on an acre, or part of an acre, right? 8.5 million acres, so you own a little piece of that. All of us do. And then there's 4.5 million acres of oak forest. We don't live in forested areas. We're pretty much all in the woodland areas here. So these 13 million acres comprise more than 1/8 of the state's area. So out of the entire surface of California, 1/8 of it belongs to habitats that are good for oak trees. It's pretty cool. Sacramento and San Joaquin regions are home to more than half of California's oak woodland. Oak forests are concentrated in the North Coast and North Interior regions. We have some here. In San Diego County, it would be Palomar Mountain, and then into like the Cuyamacas and Mount Laguna and all that. That's the only place really you're gonna find oak forests here. Everywhere else is woodland in San Diego County. There's more than 2 billion oaks in California that are greater than 1 inch. This is a 1 inch like DBH. So in forestry, when you measure a tree at 4.5 feet, you put a circumference reader around a tape, and so that's called diameter at breast height. But it really should be diameter at standard height of 4.5 feet. 1 inch. There's 2 billion at 1 inch and 800,000 greater than 5 inches, which is kind of cool. Blue oak. If you guys ever have the chance to go, so if you go to Bakersfield and then go up into Kern Canyon, all the oaks up there are blue oaks, and they're really cool. And they look similar to Engelmann oak, if you know what that is. It's blue leaves, but even more than Engelmann. It's like solid. I thought it was an Engelmann oak the first time I saw it, and then Jim, another forester who was with me, he's like, "Nah, Engelmann's only grow where you're at. These are blue oaks." And I thought it was pretty cool. Canyon, coast, and interior live oak woodlands comprise more than 1/3 of California's oak woodlands. And then black oak, canyon live oak, and tan bark are about 80% of California's oak forests, right? And so last little thing I want to read on this is more than 1 million acres of California's oak woodlands are developed, and approximately 750,000 of them are at risk of development before 2040. So that is 3/4 of how many acres there are of oak woodlands that are like just projecting how quick everything is growing around here, and people just cut. When there's several, I drive all over the county every single week, and I see it, like they'll just clear cut any tree and they don't care about it, and it's all just, oh, we're gonna put houses here, boop, put them down, but then we're gonna replant trees, and it's like, I could have done that a little bit different.
Oaks are protected from that.
Are they? Awesome. I don't know if they actually listen to that.
In my neighborhood, they did.
They did? That's good. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I hope they do. Everywhere.
I think they need to be bigger than the sapling.
Hmm?
They need to be bigger than the sapling.
For it to be protected?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna look into that. Thanks for sharing that with me. Yeah, so here in San Diego, coast live oak and canyon oak, you're gonna see those everywhere. And coast, whenever you drive, like for example, down Woods Valley Road, those are all coast live oak, pretty much that tunnel of canopy that you drove under. And so out of all trees in San Diego, 85% of basal area, so I believe that's talking about like the wood at the base of the tree, if you measure all that out, 85% are oak trees. 92% of that 85 are bigger than 5-inch DBH. So they're solidly good, long-standing trees. And you really do see that. Like I literally drive I live in Oceanside. On any given day, I could be out in Jacumba, I could be here, I could go into the inner parts of San Diego, out in Borrego Springs, anywhere and everywhere I go. There's a lot of oak trees all throughout San Diego County. Like I see it. And I think that's cool. And then Engelmann oaks they're rare, right? Karen, how do you know how rare the Engelmann oak is today as it stands?
I think it's still on CMGS's endangered list, but at the bottom of us.
Right.
They do 1 through 4, and it's like a 4-3B.
Okay.
It's a 3 out of 5 on the list I look at.
It's a 3 out of 5 on the list. Okay, cool. And that's probably in part because most nurseries do offer Engelmans now that are focused on growing oak trees. There's a few other species out there. Like right now, we're focused on pinyon pines, which are super endangered. Like that's probably a 1 if you have that list of range. And so, you know, as we talk with people about planting trees, we're really shifting our focus into the plant natives. Let's also promote endangered trees like the Cuyamaca cypress, for example. You guys, this place where we're standing right, like literally right there, are some amazing Cuyamaca cypresses that, a quick story on those. I know we're talking about oaks, but it's important here. Cuyamaca cypress, prior to 2003, they could only find about 1,000 of them from what I understand in Cuyamaca, like along the slopes going down Kitchen Creek, I believe. Then the 2003 cedar fire happened that still blows my mind how like far that thing spread out, because I was living in Ramona when that fire happened and I was a kid, but I was in Poway and I couldn't go home for like 3 days because they closed the grade, and I remember seeing the fire come over the hill and like blowing up propane tanks and stuff. That was pretty like, were you guys living here then? No, that was before. It came really close, probably to where you guys went. But long story short, after that fire, they went back and checked and they found about 40. And so the fact that you guys are growing them, like, awesome job. And they look really good. And so any chance we get and we meet people like yourself who we trust will plant and take care of this endangered tree, we're doing it. And so, yeah, I think that's awesome. And the Engelmann oak to me is one that anybody we talk to that's interested in planting native trees, they all are like, give me an Engelmann, do you have Engelmanns? And so that's a really popular tree, probably because people know that it is endangered, at least partially, you know. And so that's pretty cool. Last really good point about, you know, the land that's occupied by oak trees in our county is that out of all of those 6 regions, the southern region has the highest level of public ownership. And that's a really good thing because the public owns it. That means like U.S. Forest Service owns 44% of oak territory. Other government agencies own about 11%. And then I believe public is on the next page here. Hang on a second. It's like another 45%. And so what that means is throughout the state, there's a lot of development going on. But in our county specifically, about 70% of the land that oaks are on, at least as of like 10 years ago, are not anticipated to be developed in the near future. So that is a good thing, right? It's not that we're at risk of losing a lot of them throughout the state, but here in San Diego, we were at a talk the other day and at the Mission Trails thing, and he was saying that San Diego, the city of San Diego, even smaller territory, has the most acreage of public use land space out of any major metropolitan city throughout America. Like it's all spread out, but like think about like all the different parks you can go to throughout the county really, where you can freely roam and walk trails and stuff. Like there's a lot here. So we're really fortunate to have that. Really fortunate, right? Cool. So how do you grow an oak tree? Is it easy? Is growing oak trees easy?
Actually, it's not too hard.
It's not too hard. Yeah, I haven't done it yet, but I have a bunch of acorns I just collected because I learned about it. On my counter right now, I'm also leaching meat from acorns because I want to make flour. I'm like super into oak trees right now. But yeah, it seems like it's pretty easy to propagate. I don't have personal experience, but from what I've heard, it is. And then fastest growing oak species in the Southern California region. Anyone know?
I go for scrub.
Huh?
I'm gonna vote for scrub.
Scrub. Any others?
How's that?
No. Valley oak.
I like
Apparently you can get a 20-foot valley oak in 5 years. You go really fast. Yeah. And then another cool point that I'm remembering right now is that when you grow an oak from acorn, if you plant it in the fall, it'll spend that first amount of time not sprouting up, but building a like deep root system, right? Because it wants to be able to survive and last into this really long, old, up to 900 years, right? It's a typical oak lifetime in a natural setting where it's not messed with. It's about 900 years, where it's like 300 years of growth, 300 years of maturity and then 300 years of decay. It's a rough estimate. So focuses on roots, and then it'll shoot up some sprouts, and then that's it for like the first year. And so it's, oh, oaks grow so slow. Just give it time. Give it time. And so, yeah, that's pretty cool. And then oak diseases, I wanted to talk about that a little bit. I found a really cool website last night called suddenoakdeath.org. Suddenoakdeath.org, if you want to look it up. And they are the California Oak Mortality Task Force. So there's so much information on there that I can't spit out right now. If you're interested in learning about what the, it's Phytophthora ramorum. It's a fungus-like plant pathogen that, you know, once it gets into the oaks, it's done. Like, there's nothing you can do to save it. You can try to, you know, contain and help it not spread, but that it was, you know, from bringing invasive trees in from South. I don't remember. It came from overseas somewhere. You know, bringing any kind of plant in because we can grow them is really cool, but it does have its consequences. And for oaks, that's a really bad consequence that's happened. Moving on from that, there's two, just personal experience, two really cool mushrooms that grow on oaks that are edible and they're super easy to identify. One is the artist conch. It's part of the Ganoderma family, and it's massive. You can see them growing out of the stumps of oaks. As far as like tree risk assessment goes, if I see that, I'm like, because that means it's like eating the wood inside the tree, and so will that tree fall over in the next year and a half? Well, that doesn't look good. So, but as a amateur mycologist, I get super excited because artist conchs are cousins to, lost the name of it, but that mushroom that they're a cousin to was studied and is like super cancer fighting, super antiviral, like all kinds of things that it just like hit markers at like 80-90% of reducing kind of like diseases in humans. And so that's really cool. And then turkey tail is another one that oak trees that are dying, or you'll see them on limbs of oaks that have fallen on the ground. They'll grow out, and you have to be in like a moist area. So really in San Diego, you won't find it too much unless it's raining in avocado groves. I've spent a lot of time in them for the 2 years that I was every day in the field looking at lines. And if you want to go find some cool mushrooms in San Diego, go walking through an avocado grove because it's a forest inside of there, avocado forest. And you guys have one, yeah. I'm sure you guys ever see cool mushrooms on your property? Yeah. So, anyways, the turkey tails. If you're really interested in this, I think it's worth checking out. Listen to Paul Stamets talk about turkey tails. And they've done some really cool studies where it shrinks tumors. And another thing, and they can't like say that, but they've seen it happen. And then, but what it definitely does do is it helps people in chemo really jack up their white blood cell count so that they get through it a lot faster. If you give them, you know, tinctures or take the mycelium and capsulize it from turkey tails. With mushroom foraging, obviously do your own research, find out what they look like. With turkey tails, there's only one look-alike. It's called the false turkey tail. And it looks similar. If you know what you're looking for, it's really easy to be like, oh, that's not it, because the bottom of the turkey tail has these like super micro pores, and the top of it's super fuzzy and hairy, and just like, I always just walk around and hold them. But false turkey tail, way less studied. That is not toxic. Like, it probably has the same effects, it just hasn't been studied. And but no one's ever died or gotten sick from those. So I've made tinctures with those before, where, you know, the mushrooms that you can find on oak trees like those two, you can do a double extraction because the compounds inside of these fruits are both water and non-water soluble. And what that means is if you soak them in alcohol for 4 to 8 weeks, you'll extract all the non-water soluble compounds, and then save that liquid and then boil them in water for a couple hours, and you'll get all the water soluble contents out of it, and then you 50-50 mix that together, you have yourself a tincture, and it works really good. My only experience on that was in Santa Cruz. I got them from the forest there, and my wife and at the time my 1.5-year-old daughter both got strep throat, And then my wife got it again, and the whole time I was just like downing the tinctures, and it, probably a bit of like mental, just like I'm not getting this, and this is gonna help me right now. But that was pretty cool. So yeah, definitely some cool mushrooms you can find growing on oak trees. And then, what will grow near oak trees? I'm not as well versed on this, but here at Moosa Creek, they've set up kind of a display out there. That's exactly what that is oaks and then what can grow around it. And Andrew and Merlin, y'all could talk. These guys are really, really cool and knowledgeable, and they have a cool library in there full of all kinds of, resources to learn. Yeah. And so I think the last thing I'll say is right now, everyone take a breath. We just breathed in oxygen from the trees. Blow it out. And now you just gave them CO2. So we're all super connected with trees, right? Like humans, trees, we cannot live without them. Anything that has photosynthesis going on in the leaves, like we need that. And so in a world full of chaos where you can't control a lot of things that happen, the one thing we can do to make the world a better place is plant a tree. So I encourage you all to plant oak trees. That's it. Thank you. Questions? Anything? You talked about the tree program or whatever. Yes, sir.
Somebody said oaks sequester CO2 better than any other plant.
I would believe that, and I think part of that would probably, I heard this recently, and I want to say it's because of their like really far-reaching root systems, because when oaks, all trees, how do they take in pollutants? And CO2 is, it's a pollutant, but like it's just one of the things that they take in. It can land on them, or they can take them up through their stoma, and then they'll shoot it down into the ground. And oak roots, this is really cool you asked that because I wrote it on my hand, heard it on the way up here. Oak roots can reach out like 300 feet from the center of the oak tree. And then something else I learned is that along the way, is like out in like the wilderness or whatever, not where there's roads or anything to block it, they'll hit other roots and then they'll fuse with the roots of those trees. And that's how you get these interconnected webs of root systems from many trees that kind of help each other out. And a quick little side note, when you think about like, how do you know that trees communicate with each other? There is a cool study that was done. I can't regurgitate the name of it, but essentially what they found was they took 3 species of trees, right? So you had this one, which I don't remember the name, a fir, and then a cedar. And the hypothesis was that these 2 trees, there was a clue that they were communicating with each other and sharing resources, but the cedar was not part of that. And so in this forested stand where they were all growing, they did a test where they put a bag over this one and pumped it with like a big amount of CO2 that had some kind of like dye in it, so that when they did like a test, they could like infrared see where if that CO2 traveled to any of the other 2 trees. And then on these 2 trees, they put like a shade tarp over it so that it couldn't photosynthesize and its nutrients went down. And what they found was that this species shared nutrients with this one, but not with this one. And so when you see like pinyon pines and junipers or oaks and whatever grows around them, there probably is some kind of like interconnected root system and a communication network that has lasted for millions of years that we're not aware of. But they grow around each other and they do that naturally, but like there's just so much more to know about it. So
There's a fungus, mycorrhiza,
yeah, mycorrhiza is a root fungus that grows on the roots, right?
and somebody said that takes up more water for oaks than the roots do.
Probably, yeah, because fungus is, so a little fungus biology for you. A mushroom is the fruit of the fungus, and what that's doing is it's spreading seeds, so spores come out of the mushroom. But the body of the fungus is the white stuff under the ground. It's called mycelium, and so the mycorrhiza on roots, I don't believe they pop mushrooms out. They just live underground always, and that's how they live. But yeah, they're made of water essentially. And so that's the kind of interdependence they have with the trees, because mushrooms, there's a few different types of categories of mushrooms, but the ones that eat wood, think about it this way. If the mushrooms eat wood of dying trees, then it's in their benefit to have a healthy forest where they can constantly have a replenishing source of food. So mushrooms act as that interface between death and life in a forest. and they help forests be healthy. And so people think of them as like the immune system of the forest. And it's kind of cool. Anything else? Cool. All right. Yes, you want to say anything? This is Andrea.
Hi, I'm Andrea. So we're gonna have a acorn demo planting station,
Cool.
meet and mingle. So stick around. Plant sale too. We have the oak woodland plants and a few of us from Moose Creek to answer any questions. So yeah, enjoy your and snacks and drinks. So please enjoy yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely, that was fun.
If you need it.
Huh?
There's some water if you